We've seen some incredible tournament runs in Valorant so far, with Crew's incredible run at Champions 2021 and FPX's Masters win with a sub for the first half of the tournament. But at this year's Masters Reykjavik, there was a team that nobody expected to do well. They were at the bottom of every tier list, predicted to finish last, and probably the worst team on paper are Iceland. But after finding a unique playstyle, they defied everyone's expectations and created one of the best storylines in Valorant esports. I'm Commend, and this is the greatest underdog run in Valorant. Zeta Division joined Valorant in 2020 when they were known as Jupiter. They signed the best Japanese CSGO team at the time, Absolute, with a few familiar faces including Laz and Crow. The team consistently placed second in Japanese challenges, but weren't ever good enough to beat Crazy Raccoon and take the top spot. By stage 3 of 2021, however, after almost winning 2 domestic titles, the team had rebranded to Zeta Division, and finally managed to win in the Grand Finals over CR and get a spot at Masters Berlin. They weren't able to do much there though, facing off against strong South American teams in Vivo, Keed and Crew, so they missed out on the champion spot which went to their Japanese rivals. It was clear coming into 2022 that the team would need some roster changes to compete in international competition. Laz and Crow stayed on the team, and Sugar Zero, dapr and tenz came in to complete the roster. From their first matches in Japanese challenges, it was obvious that these roster changes were good. They went undefeated, winning the tournament by beating Crazy Raccoon in fairly dominant fashion. Things were looking up for Zeta heading into Reykjavik, or so they thought. In reality, even though they'd improved, their gameplay wasn't at the level of other international teams, and Japanese Valorant as a whole didn't really compare to other regions.
I just did like, 3-hour VOD review of Zeta Division before we recorded this podcast, and I want to spoon my eyes out.
You want to spoon? I think something happened to you earlier today because you're in a very negative mood when you were watching.
Yeah, I watched Zeta Division.
Most people expected them to go out in groups, especially when the groups were released and they were with Fnatic and DRX. It became almost a meme to talk about Japanese Valorant, with some members of the community very strongly saying that they were the worst team at the event. And they weren't wrong to think that, it was probably true. Not only did the community think they were bad though, it seemed that other teams did too. Rumours circulated that certain teams at the event had blacklisted Zeta from scrims, thinking that practicing against them wasn't worth their time. But regardless, Zeta were playing the opening match of Masters against a DRX team that looked unstoppable in Korea. If Zeta were going to show their improvements to the world, now would be the time to do it. But it was just as everyone predicted. Zeta won 5 rounds, across both maps. 13-2 on Icebox, 13-3 on Haven. Mistakes that would have flown in Japan were capitalised on by DRX, and the team was completely shut out. The day only got worse for Zeta, as Fnatic also dropped down into the lower bracket. Could they really win against a top international team with such a poor performance in the previous game? Probably not, but luckily Fnatic didn't have their full team. They were playing with 2 subs, Enzo and Hyber, as Brave was suspended and Durka had COVID. Zeta could steal a win away from a weakened Fnatic, and that's exactly what they did. We saw glimpses of great individual skill from Sugar Zero and Laz, and with Boaster having one of his worst individual performances for Fnatic ever, they took the series 2-0, their first international win. This would give Zeta a momentum boost heading into the game against NIP, another victim of DRX in the upper bracket. The first map was dominated by NIP 13-6, and it looked to be another quick loss for Zeta, but with valuable scrum experience and a win over Fnatic, they pulled through on Icebox to take the series to a map 3. If they win this, they advance to the playoffs, but lose and they're out of the tournament. Fracture swung back and forth, and NIP stayed in the driver's seat to reach a 12-8 scoreline. Zeta were down, but they weren't out. They clawed 4 rounds back with a huge performance from tenz, and the next to bring it to match point. It was here that the Zeta playstyle started to really show itself. Since coming to Reykjavik, there was a clear patience to their play that wasn't there before, and in the final round of the match, Zeta played a very slow default and then hit A, with Laz netting the kills that would lead them to victory.
キルトレの2対3ラズ落ち着いて時間使って実力を見せろラズがいる大丈夫だスオン2当たった黒頼んだラズを拡大した位置をフラッシュどうだ降りてきたか取った
There were still glaring errors in their play, and the DRX match had stayed in the back of Japanese minds, but with that win, Zeta had made playoffs, the first Japanese team ever to do so. But the playoffs were a different beast, and Zeta were surrounded by incredibly good teams. The NA powerhouses in Optic, their former opponent DRX, a fast-paced Paper Rex, and Brazilian super team Loud, just to name a few. Their first match though would be against G2, the top seed from Europe. FPX were the actual EMEA champions, but couldn't go to the tournament, so G2 took the #1 seed instead. Zeta were outmatched in every regard, and despite their newfound hope and strategies, it was a similar story to the opening game of the tournament. With Hoodie and Mixwell playing really well, it ended as a clean 2-0 for G2, as Zeta once again found themselves facing elimination. But there was another parallel to the group stage. They'd again be facing a weakened European team, this time Team Liquid. Team Liquid had only been able to attend this tournament because FPX couldn't, and it was another opportunity for Zeta to take. Fracture had become one of Zeta's best maps over their previous 4 matches, and it was no different against Liquid, especially this incredible thrifty round that secured them the map.
Where that just came from, and Sugar Zero dives in, the headhunter! Oh, Sugar Zero, what a way to do it! And dapr still stands, has to hit the shot, and it's Soul Gas on the other side, a man who's had an up and down performance, and now he's down!
Haven was just the scream show though, and Liquid took it 13-4, but going into Split, Zeta refused to lose. With the first half ending 6-6 and Zeta now on the attack, they'd have to play their best Valorant to win it out. And somehow, they won 7 of the next 8 rounds to take the map 13-7, with a final round ace from Sugar Zero to seal it.
まだある時間はたっぷりある24最後はスガーゼロのエースだスガーヒーロー誕生これは奇跡ではありません
Zeta had set out to make playoffs in this tournament, but had gone beyond even their own expectations by getting this win. Zeta's next opponent would be DRX after they lost a close series to Optic in the upper bracket. There were very few believers, aside from Japanese fans, that this match would go differently to the first time these two teams played, and many wrote this off as the end of Zeta's run. If Zeta were going to show their improvements to the world, now would be the time to do it. It was a familiar sight to see DRX and Zeta on Icebox, but it wasn't a familiar scoreline. Zeta's defensive side held strong, with Laz and dapr combining to make it an 8-4 half. DRX worked their way back into the map though, and took the lead eventually 11-10. Icebox was Zeta's map pick, so they had to find a way back in. They didn't rush to find a solution though. Again, they slowed the pace down. With no chamber, DRX had a weak kitchen hold, and Laz was able to lurk up and take down Zest, securing the flawless round. In the next, a slow default into A hit destroys DRX, and puts Zeta on match point.
The story selling a tail and Zeta! Where has this performance come from? 12-11.
And for the final round, Zeta once again played it slow, baiting out a quick push from DRX. Another flawless round gives Zeta the map, from a 2-13 the first time to a 13-11. The series wasn't over though, and Zeta got a harsh reminder of that on Ascent, where Buzz took over and DRX took the map 13-10. Split was next, a map that had been improving for Zeta throughout the tournament. As their patient playstyle became more prominent, their double controller comp worked better and better. But how would it fare against the Korean super team, who just went into overtime on it against Optic? Zeta destroyed DRX on Split, taking it 13-4 with 10 having an ACS of 345. This was probably the most surprising map this year in VCT. DRX, usually the unstoppable force, just dismantled by the lowest ranked team coming into the tournament. It was a reversal of the opening match, and so satisfying to see. Zeta had already won everyone's hearts by this point, but they weren't finished yet. They'd now made it into the top 4, along with Loud, Optic, and their next opponents, PaperX. PRX have now cemented themselves as a top team internationally, but in Reykjavik they were somewhat of an underdog too, going on a run of their own, eliminating EU and NA contenders G2 and the Guard. They're known for their high progressive style, and so the clash between that and Zeta's calm, patient style was an interesting matchup. In the first map, it seemed that Zeta were caught off guard by Jing's crazy Sage, although tenz did put up a fight. Haven was next, and was PaperX's pick, so Zeta were on the back foot, but they're used to being on the back foot, and turned it around straight away. A 10-2 defensive half became a 13-2 win, and dapr, who'd been pretty quiet so far in the tournament, activated in this map to bring the series to a third. The confidence for Zeta was through the roof, especially because the final map was Split, where they just won 13-4 over DRX. Win this, and they secure 3rd place, higher than anyone ever thought they'd go. 2 words: Sugar Zero. He showed why he should be considered one of the top controllers in the world on this map, dropping 24 kills to take Zeta to a 13-10 win and 3rd place in the tournament. They'd made it all the way to the lower final, turned many across the world into Zeta fans, including me, and defied the expectations of everyone. Optic would be their next opponent in the lower final, but unfortunately their run was destined to end there. After a 15-13 overtime loss on Haven, with Marved going ballistic, dropping 35 kills, Optic would go into another gear and overtake Zeta, beating them 3-0 and going on to win the tournament. The unplayed maps were Icebox and Split, so it would have been interesting to see what could have been if Zeta did take that first map, but Optic were just too good in Reykjavik. After Zeta's incredible performance at the event, a certain member of the community had to make a formal apology.
I am gonna issue an apology.
Okay. Finally.
I'm sorry. I thought Zeta Division would be a bad team based on their bad online performances, and I was wrong. I'm ashamed of my analysis. I should have realized Zeta would improve exponentially at Reykjavik. It's my job to predict results accurately, and I should have known that a region that only had won 3 maps ever at Masters would make top 4 at this event. I let my baldness go to my head, and for that, from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. Yeah, all I can hope for is you accept this apology.
The Zeta story continued at Champions, where they lost to Loud, the eventual winners, twice in groups. Zeta did make franchising as one of 2 Japanese teams though, and they're keeping the same roster for Sao Paulo. I can't wait to see how they'll do there, and if we get any underdog runs just like Zeta's. RRQ anyone? Speaking of Sao Paulo, I'm hoping to get watch party rights for it, so like, subscribe, and let's make it happen. I've been Commend, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.